Yeah, welcome everybody to the presentation of the new book by Mario Pfeifer. Now we are back live. The artist talk was recorded and we're also switching from the German language to English. So thanks for joining us. And we have an exciting round of people here that participated in the production of the book, and they are virtually meeting. They are from Canada and Germany. At least we have one compensation for that we cannot meet in real space. My name is Marcel. I'm the co-director of the Edith-Russ-Haus for Media Art in Oldenburg, together with Edith Molnar, and we are hosting the actual solo show of Mario. And now I would like to introduce the speakers of this presentation. I start with Nomaduma Rosa Masilela. She's an artist, writer, and curator currently based in Berlin. She holds a master in art history and philosophy from Columbia University. And her research focuses on collective and performance art practice in Dhaka, and her writing and curatorial practice have generally worked in service of critically supporting the work of queer and femme-identifying artists from the global South and its diasporas. Her curatorial practice includes exhibition and project at the Rijksakademie in Amsterdam, the Museum of Modern Art, and the Kitchen, both in New York, and contributions as a co-curator to the 10th Berlin Biennial. Georg Imdahl is a freelance art critic living in Düsseldorf, and he's professor for art and public space at the University of Fine Arts in Münster. He works primarily for leading German publications like Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Deutschlandfunk, and Texte zur Kunst, to name a few. His most recent book is about Santiago Sierra and the historicity of contemporary art. Markus Weisbeck is a graphic designer based in Frankfurt am Main, where he funded his studio in 2000. He worked for institutions like MMK Frankfurt, the Foresight Company, Zumtobel, the Städelschule, the German Pavilion of the Venice Biennial, Manifesta 7, German Design Award, Sternberg Press, and he made more than 100 books for artists and institutions, including 5 monographs of Mario Pfeifer. He's also professor for graphic design at the Bauhaus University in Weimar. Mario Pfeifer is an artist who works mostly with film and video and installations based on collaborative practice, and his project stems from rather specific socio-political situations. Solo exhibitions including Folkwang Museum in Essen, the Power Plant in Toronto, Pylon Lab in Dresden, Kunstsammlung Chemnitz, GFZK Leipzig, Akut Berlin, Photomuseum Winterthur, Ludley 38 in New York. Of course, he was also in various group shows, most notably the 10th Berlin Biennial. Mario was the holder of the Media Art Grant of the Stiftung Niedersachsen at the Edith-Russ-Haus, and he proposed a new project under the title Cell 5, 800 degrees Celsius, which investigates one of the most controversial cases in recent German judicial history. It's the case of Uri Jallo, an asylum seeker from Sierra Leone who in 2005 burned to death in detention cell 5 at the Dessau-Rosslau police station while under custody. Gaëtane Verna, who will moderate this talk, is an art historian and the director of the Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery in Toronto. And before, she was the executive director and the chief curator of the Musée d'Art de Joliette. She served as curator for the Forman Art Gallery at Bishop's University, while teaching also there and at the Université du Québec à Montréal. And in 2017, Verna was named Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres, Order of Arts and Letters by the French government. So these are our speakers. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really looking forward. 2 practical notes. We consider the whole presentation to be around 1 hour, and after the presentation, you can ask questions also during the presentation. Please use the chat for this. We will note all this and then answer on this. And now I'm happy to hand over to you, Gaëtane.
Thank you so much, Marcel. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I come to you virtually from the shores of Lake Ontario in Toronto, Canada. Hence, before we start, please join me in acknowledging the history, culture, and stewardship of the land of this region's Indigenous people, most recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit, a Mississauga Ojibwe First Nation. We seek to live in respect, peace, and right relations with them as we live and work upon their traditional territory. So first, I would like to thank Marcel and his entire team, as well as Mario Pfeifer and our guests for this wonderful invitation to share with you this momentous book, this monograph that we all contributed to produce and finish during this global pandemic that is affecting us all differently, yet still presenting daily challenges to all of us. So I would like to start by introducing the exhibition, and this is an exhibition that was supported by the Goethe Institute in Toronto, and also by Elisa Neuten and David Dime, donors to the institution, as well as Canada Council, Ontario Arts Council, and Toronto Arts Council. So the exhibition that gave way to this monograph, and I would like to just introduce the exhibition and the context in which the exhibition took place, and then we can dive into the book. And that, and for me, the book represents another space of exhibition, and a space of exhibition that will live on in a very different way from the physical exhibition. So for those of you who might not know, the Power Plant is a non-collecting museum. As such, exhibition making, publication, and symposias are at the core of our work. So in summer 2019, we exhibited the work of Mario Pfeifer as part of our summer 2019 exhibition program. The other artists who were showcased during the season were Johanna Haji Thomas and Khalil Jorej with an exhibition titled On Scams. And we also presented the work of British sculptor Thomas J. Price titled Ordinary Men. And thirdly, Mario's exhibition titled If You End Up with the Story You Started With, Then You're Not Listening Along the Way. So the title came from a quote in an article in the Toronto Star that Mario and I thought would be fitting for this trilogy of video installation, and that Mario read during his first visit to Toronto a year or so prior to the exhibition. So he came for a site visit, and being embedded within our community and the current event, he read this article, and this was an excerpt from this really great article about a photographer who had passed away. So this exhibition was his first solo exhibition in Canada, and the three works that were presented were Blacktivist from 2015, informed from his work with the Brooklyn-based rap group the Flatbush Zombies, as well as the work titled Approximation in the Digital Age to a Humanity Condemned to Disappear, which is a work from 2014, informed from his 4 months with the Yagan people in Tierra del Fuego, Chile. And lastly, again, a 2018 work informed by a fait divers taking place in his home country of Germany. Each of the works center on narrative often forced out of our frame of vision. In each work, Pfeifer demonstrates his commitment to the stories of the individuals and the communities that he brings to our broader attention. I'm always particularly interested in the manner in which he immerses himself within the communities, taking the time and the necessary dedication to his projects in order to build trust and community in order to create the work that will unfold after the many months of engagement. So today we're here to talk about the other iteration of the exhibition, which is the book. It's a 256-page book that has been thought of as another space of exhibition. And on that is very different from the physical space of the gallery. And it's in no way replaces the exhibition, but it is one that provides another approach to engaging with the works and encompasses text by Georg Imdahl, a conversation between the artist Mario Pfeifer and Canadian artist Stan Douglas, a text by Nomaduma Rosa Masilela. And this new space is then conceptualized through the work of the graphic designer Markus Weisbeck. And today we're really lucky to have this time to speak to the different protagonists of the book. So the book, I mean, I imagine not many of us have had the joy of holding the book. I have it, and it's a full color. It presents images of the installation at the power plant. It also integrates the script of the most recent work again, and also documents other works of the artist, and also expands the work again by highlighting some of the testimonial of the protagonists in this video work. The book is generous in its size. It's printed in Germany by DZA Altenburg and distributed by Mousse Publishing. It goes without saying that this book is very much a team effort, and it could not have been produced without this team effort, and I could not be prouder and happier with the final result. It is both an imposing book, but it is also thoughtful and expands the scope of the exhibition and sustains our engagement with the work of the artist. So we will begin now with, I will invite Markus to join us.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Markus. So nice to meet you face to face, at least virtually, after holding, what I always see as a part of the graphic designer. And I would very much like for us to speak about, Marcel, in introducing you, was talking about the fact that this is not your first book that you've produced with Mario Pfeifer. And I would like to ask you, how did you approach this project? And the reason behind my question is because I think that too often people do not necessarily understand the work of a graphic designer, the work that they bring to a publication. And can you broadly speak of, how you approach this project and how you decided to develop this book particularly?
So in this book, we're starting inside to other books more a kind of structuring projects, and the main focus on the organization with the several chapters and information. And we worked here more as architects and typesetters in a way for this publication, because it's more about organization. And from the graphical viewpoint, it's important to have a kind of strong elements but not too loud to weaving these kind of chapters together. And these elements, we are mostly using thin lines and a kind of strict grid, and to bring these kind of completely different time artworks. Mario, we have decided to have these books together. And this result is also, I must say, a kind of more than 10 years collaboration that as a graphic designer speaking, it's designing a book with an artist is mostly about weaving. So weaving means that we have different contents and different skills, and these came together in a publication, and luckily that when the content and together with the artist and the skills of the information and the content of the graphic designer, so my person, the designer, brings something together that you didn't expect before. And this is a kind of very kind of important process what you only have in good collaborations, because you can't do this as a designer on your own. You need another person who came also with ideas about this weaving thing.
Mm-hmm. And, I've done many books, and I must say that it's so, the fact that you and Mario had this long-standing relationship really came true, because myself as an editor, Mario and I discussed the content. We discussed, what, images and certain general things. But I must say, in this case, the two of you worked together. And then when Mario sent me the first PDF, I was, blown away about how, I practically had nothing to say. It was like, wow, this is like it. What I really appreciate is how you treated the different elements, because integrating, let's say, the script of the book, which is like a lot of text, was, could be very tedious in terms of how you present it. And I must say that one sees the trust that was built between the two of you. And I was wondering, how do you balance, your ideas that you have, initially when somebody approaches you for a book, somebody that might not be Mario, when they approach you for a book, how do you balance your own ideas when you look at the material, and then without overpowering the artwork? Because sometimes I find some graphic designers are very heavy-handed, and then instead of looking at an artwork, especially when we're thinking at an artwork, it feels like it's more a graphic designer flexing their muscles, showing us what they can do, without having an attention to what is their role and how. So how do you balance this?
So, Mara and me, we have, as I told before, we are a kind of long collaboration team. And when we produced a formal film in 9 episodes, prologue and epilogue publication in Mumbai, for example, there we were completely clear that we want to work completely on a conceptual approach, following kind of different kind of printing techniques in India. So we had the opportunity to travel several times to the country to and visit to Mumbai and have a lot of support from different kind of printers, and all in this publication and also in our publication we are talking about now is the process of, let us say, reproduction techniques, paper change, etc., individuality of different kind of books, much more important than muscle playing for designers. So and this is also the reason. So mostly, if you know my project, we are working with 1 or 2 typefaces. We are not keen on using kind of expressive editorial design, etc. This is not really our style or my kind of concept. So mostly is to as I told before, it's about the art of weaving things together, and also that you have and the third person are much more important than me as a designer or Mario as an artist, because the book is now in the world. And the people must read the book, must fine with the book, must like it, etc. And also there's a lot of content in it that would make no sense from the artistic way, make no sense to make the muscle play, and also from the graphic designer aspect. So we are in the kind of need of, let us say, editorial design who not got on your nerves, not as too loud, etc. Could be readable with all those aspects, etc. And this we are following most or less every publication we made together.
Okay. And then my last question to you, I mean, the other thing I must tell the audience is the book is English and German. And so, and I really enjoy the way you kind of treated, like, how do you, I live in Canada, and in Canada, there's always the question of producing books in both French and English. Which language do you put first? Which do you put second? How do you balance them out so that no one feels left out or undermined? And so what dictated your choices within this context?
No, the thing is, the only thing that you have in the book is the order. What is not really good on advantage to change the size of the typeface, etc., and all these kind of thing. You can do this with kind of background color thing. You can do this with a kind of composition wise. Yeah, making it a little bit more interesting, but you can't, but it's not really good to kind of favorize one language as first, etc. But we know exactly when we had Mousse publishers on board, there is a more international language than a German, than a publication, than a German publication, and we decided this very, very soon in the beginning.
And then my last question for you would be, what are your key benchmarks in determining the success of a book, and how do you measure, the success in terms of your collaboration with the artist, with the editor, with the publisher, and the final product, and the printer also. So what makes for you, I mean, is this a successful book, number one? And number two, what makes a project for you a successful book?
Yeah, as I told a little bit before, this is kind of it's all about an collaboration with the curators, with the museums, people, etc., and with the kind of freedom of the designer, and and also discussing about not to let in any crazy ideas who come overnight, etc. So it must be all kind of a kind of well balanced thing. So, and because the reason is that the book is something who's really on the journey 10 or even 20 or more years, etc. And you can't make any kind of crazy zeitgeist with these kind of ideas that that you running out of fashion because you produced, designed, or printed these books in 2020 and not 2010 and not 2030, etc. And this is a kind of very important, because books are very kind of let us say classic thing. You must see the time when it's produced, but not so overloading that we are 2020, etc. And there are other medias, web pages, apps, etc., who are better in this, but you must have a completely other sensibility for designing something you can't change anymore.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Markus. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I will introduce Georg. Are you with us, Georg?
Yes, I am.
Oh, hi. You you are an art critic. You're a professor also, and you wrote a text in the book that is titled "A Humanity Condemned to Disappear." And your text focuses on Mario's interest in societal debates and our democratic consciousness, or lack of, and also our withdrawal of society's basic consensus. So what was your, what first, were you aware of Mario's work? Have you written on it in the past?
No, I think the first time that we met Mario was in Chemnitz. It was on the occasion of an opening of a small show of yours in Chemnitz. And Chemnitz is a city in East Germany where the far-right extremists are very strong. There is a party, AfD, Alternative for Germany, called very ugly people. And I learned to know Mario as an artist who is really interested in what he researches. And when I visited him before writing my text, as I always do when I'm writing a longer text, to visit and listen to the artist, I learned him to know as somebody who is very, very informed about what he's dealing with. Yeah, so he had so many files, source materials, press papers. He collects everything, I think, and he has a specific desire to listen to the people he collaborates with. And well, this is for me interesting too, because I I see it as a privilege to have open access to the artists, to speak with them, to put questions. And yes, I'm always interested in, well, in the attitude, the thinking of an artist. Every piece of art, in my experience, has its own story, its own development, and often you cannot really know it just by recepting the piece. Often it's very useful to ask. Perhaps Mario, you can show this freezer image where Shabazz is lying in the freezer. This is an image where I had discussions with many people about before writing the text. And before really knowing what it shows or what it should show or what its meaning could be, Mario, perhaps you find this.
Yeah, it's a picture in the freezer.
That,
Yes.
yeah, and I met people who are interested in Mario's work, but who said this is pure cynicism. And then, of course, we know that this man, this asylum seeker, has been found frozen in a forest. But what I didn't know or what I heard from Mario is that he also thought of an incident in Austria in this time where 71 people from Iran, from Syria, from Afghanistan had been found deadly in a refrigerated truck at a highway. So those are examples for the value of talking with artists when you deal with them. And well, yes, this is how we met. And I think it's up to now the only text. No, it's the only text I wrote about Mario's work.
Maybe one thing to add for our first encounter, which was in Chemnitz at the show at the State Art Collection. And what was quite interesting and quite intense, that the show opened on the day of unification of Germany, on the 3rd of October. And a few days before, I think 2 days before, the Secret Service captured multiple people of a terrorist cell in Chemnitz.
Sure.
Because in the summer before, they had kind of riots because a Cuban German teenager was stabbed to death by 2 asylum seekers potentially. And so within this context, we had a full house at the opening, we had police protection at the opening, and we had quite an engaged discussion with an East German crowd. Yeah, even the Shoah came up. And I think that was also, I think for you, Georg, the first time you went to Chemnitz, right?
Maybe, yeah.
But somehow, I mean, what is negotiated in the works that were exhibited, that was again and about education and fear, I think we could feel it live opening that exhibition. So the correlance between reality and what is supposed to be some art that is in a museum behind thick walls, that was quite an experience even for me.
Yes, so to add this, I have been very often in the former DDR, in the eastern state of Germany, but indeed it was the first time for me to visit Chemnitz. And you, Mario, you come from that area, from Saxony, so you have a specific feeling for what the people are thinking there. And this is interesting for your entire work, or for many works of you too, I would say.
And so, Georg, in your treatment of, the how did you choose what you wanted to talk about in terms of, how do you perceive your role as an art critic, as an art historian, being the bridge between the work of Mario and a text that will live on as written word? And how do you treat this, your approach to writing this text, let's say in opposition to writing an article in a specialized magazine, in opposition to writing a text for a publication that is a catalog, a monograph?
Well, there's a big difference between writing a review and an essay, I would say, because a review always is related to one exhibition, and the field is small then, so you don't have such a broad field where you have to invent yourself what to deal with. And to be honest, at first I was really a little confused what to write about, because I think Mario's work consists of very, very different approaches. And well, in terms of a philosophy of contemporary art, as Peter Osborne wrote it, you can say that Mario finds for every subject matter his own language. And this is what I appreciate in his work, but I didn't really get the point what it is about at first. And then I made the remark that we went through for 2 or 3 days in Berlin his entire work until now. Then I noticed that the phenomenon of disunion in our civil societies is one subject matter. This what he treats for years already, and well, this was my argumentation then, because Mario in recent years, as you mentioned, well, he devoted several works, well, in a way to the breakdown of our democratic consciousness or to the decline of it, and he does this in, how can I say, from very different angles, yeah. Pop culture, documentary filmmaking, theater, performing, very different well, approaches to what he's interested in, and this is interesting for me as a writer. This perhaps you can call it inventing his own language for every new piece, and that Mario is really interested in visual and aesthetic results and solutions. Yeah, it's not only on the right standpoint, it's really on what an image can be for this.
Yeah, and I think that one thing I would say, for having lived with those works for about 3 to 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
is like those images stay with you for a long, long time, you know?
Yeah.
Like the image that you chose of the protagonist in the freezer, it's like each time I come upon this image, I'm back in the, like I can see the entire work, you know, in my mind. The same for, you know, the approximation, whether it is an image of the Yagan people, you know, cutting the head of
Oh, yes.
an ox, you know, which is very difficult to watch. And, you know, within our prescribed urban way of living, you know, for those of us who eat meat, you never see that process, right?
Yeah.
So it's very shocking, but then it stays with you. But then you look at the landscape, or as I said to Mario, I love King Crab, but he's killed it for me forever, because as I look at his work showing us the processing, it's like you really realize how this mass production is emptying the sea, you know, of everything.
Yeah.
And I can no longer look at this in the same way, unfortunately for me. And just to know, like this, he was just showing us 1 month of something that is going on as we watch those, and then his fashion, his way of taking us in different spaces. But there is that leitmotif of always the human element and active human engagement, whether for good reasons or bad reason, which is always embedded, and then those beautiful landscapes. So yeah.
Yes. And
All right.
in this case, Mario too, you spend a lot of time there, when I get it right. Yeah, several weeks until you yourself got an access to these people. Yeah, so this is what I mean when I said you are really interested. Yeah, it's not only that you get an idea and then you think how to realize a picture or film or whatever. It is really that I think you were still not far from failure in this case. Is it true? I think so.
Yes, it took about 10 to 12 weeks that I even would have the chance to talk to somebody. So I thought within this first 12 weeks that this was one of the biggest faults in my young career. So I was really close to leaving that island, Tierra del Fogo. And I took a 2-week break in Brazil to visit the Sao Paulo Biennial and to finally get some energy back. And then when I returned, a lot of doors opened. So this persistence also, to wait for the smallest chance in order to start to communicate. I think that project taught me a lot, and it was physically very hard, but also socially, because I was very isolated, living on an island by myself. But it was one of the most intriguing experiences, and I'm thankful for that. And I think this 3-channel video installation really also gives you these aspects of isolation, of force of nature, but also force of capitalism. It's even for me still interesting to see that I managed to capture these experiences. Yeah, because I was filming myself within the community when they accepted me, and somehow there were not many routes to take. I was guided by the community, and the project became what they wanted to share with me. Yeah, but then of course there are aesthetic choices I take that elaborate and also elevate the project into something that can really live on, because we talk about a culture that is 10 to 30,000 years old in a place that is very far away from the so-called centers of our society, and still the video installation looks very up to date. The representation of the place and its people is in a way very modern. Yeah, and I think I was lucky that a lot of things fall into place. Yeah, but on the other hand, I'm happy I was persistent. Yeah, because you have to be persistent in the end with each project. It doesn't matter, and because if you're persistent, you can actually get somewhere.
So, Georg, one last question: what do you want the readers to take from your text? What's the, how would you summarize your contribution to this book in terms of your text and the posture you took in speaking of or commenting on Mario's work?
Well, to put it short, I would say I want to give them an idea of how Mario and that Mario dramatizes in his work fundamental questions of our society in the present time. Who speaks for society and in the name of the people, we the people, who is this? How are we to view the claim to truth asserted to language and speech? And well, how can a contemporary artist find images for this and an own narrative on this? Working with the Flatbush zombies, or asking people from Saxonia, or going to Patagonia. These are so many different ways to get close to contemporary issues of our time. I would say this is what contemporary art is in a way.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So now we'll move to Nomaduma.
Hello.
Hello, nice to see you. So you are an artist, a writer, and a curator, and you were part of the curators that commissioned the work again for the 10th Berlin Biennale in 2018. And in your essay, you introduced a performance or live presentation of the work again, and its transformation from a video work to a stage or live performance. So, can you first speak of the commissioning of the work in its initial state within the Berlin Biennale? And then you can also expand on the reception of the work within the Berlin Biennale.
Mm-hmm. So yes, first of all, thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure to work on this essay and to work with Mario again, and also to see everyone who contributed to it. For the 10th Berlin Biennale, which was in 2018, which was titled "We Don't Need Another Hero," we were a curatorial team of 5, and we were really, our main concerns were mainly questioning unyielding knowledge systems and normative historical narratives. And why we wanted to present work that insisted upon different configurations of knowledge and power that enabled contradictions and complications of various subjectivities and subject positions. And which also questioned existing social frameworks and constructs. And so Mario's project, again, Noch einmal, which is film that we presented really was in direct conversation with our concerns. And this, again, Noch einmal was a film, two-screen projection, which addressed the xenophobic attack of a young Kurdish refugee in East Germany in 2016, and his eventual death in 2017. And his name was Shabazz Saleh Al-Aziz. And Georg kind of mentioned this project, but Mario was really interested in constantly examining how does one become civically engaged, or what is civic engagement within, I mean, in this case, within the context of Germany and its relationship and oftentimes violent relationship with kind of migrant populations within Germany, or immigrant populations as well. And this young man was living in Germany, and he was attacked in a grocery store. I mean, there was a disagreement. He was attacked, and a lot of the ways in which this attack, that was 5 men dragged him out of the supermarket, was a lot of ways in which the media presented this attack, and in which there was a sort of an anonymous YouTube recording of the attack from within, using an iPhone from within the supermarket, was that this was an act of civil courage, and that sort of and at the same time, there was a lot of like slow response to actually addressing sort of the mistreatment of Shabazz, and also and the ways in which his eventual death the following year was really kind of pushed through like a really kind of Kafkaesque bureaucratic system of negligence and of isolation and a bureaucratic abuse, essentially, and how this was sort of sanctioned within kind of conversations of what it is to within this greater conversation of who needs to be protected by institutions, from whom, by whom, to what end. And so all of these questions, and the fact that there was a court case that was to examine this attack on Al-Shabazz by these 5 men, which was ultimately dismissed, because it was decided, and was dismissed after his death, because it decided that since the victim was no longer alive, this case was no longer valid, there was no public interest. And so all of these ways in which it really, the systemic violence within the kind of German system was as much precipitated his death, as much as the violence that he experienced physically. And so Mario's, he framed, he reenacted parts of this attack with this young kind of resident of Berlin, Dylan Mohammed, who is not a trained actor, but who acted both in the film and the live performance that happened, that Mario staged 1 year later in 2019 in Amsterdam. But he was really asking questions of how does one think of civic engagement within society as a mode of resistance to any unquestioning belief in the equity of any sort of legal proceedings in the face of all of this information of the injustice. And so I think he restaged the attack, and he sort of presented archival material, including this iPhone footage of this person who filmed the attack, and the media interviews and the media onslaught celebrating his attackers, and also then organize a jury that he organized, since there was no actual court case, of East German residents who are of German background and of migrant backgrounds. And he sort of in order to discuss what happened in an attempt to sort of examine where where the systems had failed him, where they actively endangered him, and their own experience within this. And so then he restaged this in Amsterdam and sort of asked the audience to kind of serve as, to be given the piecemeal information that is available about the attack, the death, and then the kind of dismissal of this court case. And he asked the audience in Amsterdam to address this, to be presented with this information, and then to have a discussion around it, which I think was incredibly interesting and generative. But I guess in the essay that I wrote, I was interested in sort of the ways in which a number of the people in the audience, well, it's a number of things. I think Mario has spoken about how he wants to present a story to an audience, to a group of people, to an audience, and then have them do with it what they will, within opening up the discussion, and to see what happens as a result. And so for me also, it was quite interesting to see how a lot of people did pick up on, or did speak about, sort of this institutional and like systemic violence that Shabazz faced. But also there was quite a few comments of like still an insistence upon the on legal order, and the fact that like things will become better. The sort of idea somehow that change, or like really big, important changes within civil rights, etc., have been historically proven to be ones in which it's been people actively protesting and insisting and really placing themselves in a position of opposition to the state, which is continuing certain oppressive and behaviors. I think it's quite fitting that we have this meeting today on the anniversary of the shootings in Hanau, which was 1 year ago today, and which there are vigils across Germany held today for the victims of this terrorist attack. And because I think these kinds of discussions need to kind of actions need to be constantly maintained, and we need to remain vigilant. I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions.
Yeah, but one of the thing is, it's interesting to see his work like now, and it was created, it was premiere in 2018, and now we're in 2021, and Lord knows everything that's come before us since then. And what was the reception of the work, within the context of the Biennale, from everyday visitors to I'm not so much interested in what the critical response, like the art world, but what everyday people, did you get a sense, or the team from the Biennale, were you able to get a sense, take the pulse of the people that were coming, and was it generating I can tell you what it created in Toronto, which was quite incredible. And for me as a viewer, or from the conversation I had with different people, everybody came out with, what would I have done if I was standing there? Would I have thought that this person is the guilty party? Would I have questioned whether these people should have done that? Would I have phoned the police? Would I have stood in the way? Or would I have been a silent bystander, So that's my question to you. What did you, it's two-part. What was the reception in, at the time, from the visitors at the Berlin Biennale, or your understanding of their perception, and how?
I mean, yes, I mean, of course, there was like big, massive, like critical and kind of press response to it. But I think for people, from the visitors that I spoke with, and also later in speaking about the biennial, years later as well, I think people, I think what was amazing, or what was the strength of the work, was really that people would kind of like walk through a space, but would really sit and watch the entirety of this film, of the 2-screen projection, which was, I'm trying to remember now 23 minutes. And also came out with, I think it raises a lot of questions of what one's role is and how one positions oneself and what is actually, because of course the men who attacked him were presented as these courageous, what is this, a neighborhood watch or something, as these protectors. And what does one do in response to this? But also not only when one is present in the supermarket, because, but also what does one do afterwards? What kind of pressure does one place on especially as an unthreatened kind of citizen of a country? What kind of pressure does one place on the systems that are really oppressive, and to your fellow countrymen or fellow neighbors, and etc. And I think that really raised, I think it in a similar way as in Toronto, it raised a lot of questions. And the thing is that I think in a way sometimes, it was interesting to have the discussion in Amsterdam for the live performance, because I think sometimes it's a bit easier it's easier to talk about another place's problems rather than one's own. Like, these issues are not somehow, maybe specific, they present themselves in very specific ways, but they don't exist purely in Germany. In the Netherlands, there's a lot of anti-migrant sentiments, and also in the here in Germany, when there was there were many protests also in support of the Black Lives Matter movement in the US and kind of across the world, in response to the murder of George Floyd. But at the same time, it's much harder to have a conversation or to about the fact that Uri Jallo's death is still deemed as not an active death or precipitated by state violence. From 2005, these are kinds of ongoing conversations that are much harder to have in one's own home. And I think that's something that Mario keeps pushing. This in his future projects and also now. And I think this kind of a desire for there to be, in the audience responses, there were, I think even within the structure of the theater, I think Mario was kind of trying to create a space in which maybe someone could interject. The moderators kind of were asking questions into the audience, but there was a sort of, a sort of behavior based on the situation that one was in. In a theater, you don't speak out. In a supermarket, when something is happening, you don't react. So kind of, I think it really pushes, like the live performance and also the film really pushed at how does one actually engage, and what is the point at which one feels, to really think about beforehand as well, about what one's own political position is, and become engaged as a result.
Yeah, I think when I come as a curator, as a director, to choose works of art, I always think that, maybe it's a kumbaya well-wished that I hope that the works of art that we choose to present within our space actually change our visitors in their everyday as citizens, right? And I would hope that after seeing such a work and staying with it, the next time you're in a situation, and I'm not asking people to throw themselves in the situation, but that you think of what is your impact, or what should you stay, and should you be part of a campaign? Should you go march? Should you support others who will do the work for you? But we can no longer stay silent, because if you stay silent, that means you're not condoning, you're part of the problem also. And I really believe that, art galleries, through the voices of artists, have to be this catalyst for change, or else, nothing is going to ever move forward. And I think that so thank you so much for being within the book, being that voice that bridges the video work into the performative work. And I would ask Mario to come and I mean, you've been there, but join us in the conversation. And I want to get back to what Nomaduma was saying in terms of the work again. And if you can speak on what was your interest in moving it from, a work in a film festival, an experience, a live experience, an exhibition within, whether it's the power plant or the commissioning at the Biennale, and then TV broadcasts in 2021. How do all of these modes of expanding your work of art fit within your mind as an artist project?
Yeah, well, thank you to all of you for joining, having these great contributions again. For me as an artist, audience plays quite an important role. So mainly I work, of course, in the exhibition space. So I care about how does an institutional space work for my work? How can I present my message? How can I present a structure, a strategy to confront basically an audience with my findings, with the story I develop? So the audience plays a major role in my artistic production. And I'm also, since maybe 2015, after I lived isolated on that island in Chile, I thought about, is there another art audience than the art audience? And that led me to collaborate with rappers, with the Flatbush Zombies, because I thought Black Lives Matter, the killing of Eric Garner, is such a big message that needs to be transported within the institution, but it needs to be louder than that, because it's a bigger problem than the museum can handle. So bringing an installation also to YouTube and receiving more than 3 million clicks is a huge success, but it also means that you are able to confront an even larger audience. Yeah. Again, it was interesting that I pitched it to a European TV channel in order to, again, have access to a larger audience, because in a way I'm frustrated with TV culture. I'm frustrated with what I see on TV. And I think it needs more radical, more engaging films to be presented in TV in order to change the viewer's behavior. Because if we want to change how our society works, how justice is failing, then I want to have a contribution as an artist. And the only way to achieve that is by producing art that can maybe extend the walls of the museum to a larger audience. Yeah, we presented it at film festivals, and then I got invited to stage the reenactment film again, which is quite theatrical, in a theater in Amsterdam. It was a wonderful festival, ITVA. And I, of course, agreed to do that because we got all the elements, but transforming it from a German context into a Dutch context meant, again, to grasp on a new audience, to make the project flexible enough so it can be adapted to another country's agenda, situation, yeah, so that the audience can identify with it. So it's also about making the audience identify with the destiny of Shabazz. Yeah, so I need to restructure the piece here and there so it speaks to a wider audience. We're also planning to bring the project to Kurdistan. So that will be a completely different audience and setting, because this is where Shabazz escaped from. So if I have the chance to modify my project with very simple steps, mainly casting, maybe the translation of a script, but posing the same question, because it's an essential question for our society. How do I act with civil courage? How do I get engaged? How can I help? How can I de-escalate a situation? That is basically what many works of mine are about. How can I give a little contribution to communication? And I need to be smart about how I construct my works of art so they speak in order to be listened. But then comes the interesting part, how people live on with these works. Yeah, and that's why our exhibition title is so on the point. I expect from myself to give the audience the chance to visit an exhibition, to visit a cinema, to watch TV, to go to the theater, to read our book, and to change fundamentally for a tiny bit. If we can reach that, that's a great contribution. That's how I walk into a museum. That's how I switch on my TV. That's how I go to the theater. And that's how I read a book. I want to learn something that I don't know. Yeah. So this is kind of what I'm trying to do. And I need great partners who allow me that. The Berlin Biennial was a wonderful partner. You were a wonderful partner. Mousse Publishing is a wonderful partner. The Edith-Russ-Haus is a wonderful partner. We need to address and put out questions without fear. We need to research them well, but we also need an engaged audience. So we need to give them certain tools so that they cannot escape, I would say. I would have not let the audience escape from the theater if they wouldn't have responded. They knew the lights went on, they need to talk. And some of them did. The majority didn't, but they still listened. Yeah. So it's really about this exchange and touching base. And so performative works have other strategies than video works, for example.
Yeah, because in a museum setting, a visitor can come, sit, listen, and then leave. But when you're in a theater or in the play, and you create this opportunity for them to possibly, exchange and speak when confronted with the words and the actors, and also the physical reaction to the bodies of the actors within the space. So there's less distance than in the video. I think it's really, I think I would love to be part of seeing the iteration of Again as like a play. And as you were speaking, I see his figure as, a complete, a tragic character. It's really a human tragedy that is sadly, repeating itself in different iterations, but that can be told from, the US to Germany to all over the world, in Canada also. Everybody has these different iterations of these acts, and you could even transpose it into an opera if one would want to stretch it to that way.
Yeah, and also if you think about the dimension of art, it's really meant, and that's what Georg and Markus said, it's for infinity in a way. If it's stable, if it's functioning, then the work Again has really managed to give Shabazz a place in history, a sad and tragic place, but still we acknowledge his existence. And there are all too many destinies that we won't remember. Yeah. So art has also, in my perspective, the role to document a certain moment in time of our society and to attach questions to it that will potentially for a longer time we have to ask and find answers to these questions. Yeah, so bringing also the performance and the film to Kurdistan will be a big event, I imagine. Yeah, and it will be an important event. Not so much because of me, more of Shabazz.
Shabazz, yeah, and also contextualizing his story from their perspective of also understanding what their own people have to go through when they leave what is already seemingly a very challenging way, a social political condition. So it's as if giving them a window into this other part of this, the immigrant experience from their perspective. Exactly. One question I wanted to ask you to wrap up is really, what does, making books is really important in your practice. And I want you to tell me a bit about, what does it mean as a way to address the importance of written text and of book and images and monograph, within your work as an artist? Where do you position it in comparison to, just exhibitions, producing works? Where does the monograph, the bookmaking, and that relationship with authors, curators, and graphic designer, how does that all fit in together?
Yeah, first of all, I think since this is the 5th monograph, that working with time-based media, I always need a place and quite a lot of equipment to make my work visible. It doesn't really function on a computer screen only. You can see that. I see that more as a documentation, but the book gives it a visibility and a physical visibility that the work itself doesn't really have. So that's the first thing. So it's a way to document a setting in which the work speaks best. The collaboration with writers or other artists for interviews or with a designer means to, give the work a certain framework, but also to let writers contribute of what they see, to have them experience the piece and share their knowledge and thoughts. So often I'm very surprised about the essays that are produced, because I learn a lot myself. So I always take this as an indication of a fruitful collaboration for readers. Of course, it's also quite privileged to be able to be part of monographic productions, but I take it very serious. I think this is, in the end, something that will always point to the work. So it's an entry field. So we also produce records with soundtracks, where you enter through the music into the work of art. With the book, you basically have somebody who's interested in art books finding the work. It's also about tracing the work. And I try to always gather writers that I feel interested in myself, in their societal contribution. And in conversations, of course, with Stan Douglas, it was also amazing to share thoughts about from different angles, from different generations, on how we look at society and how we look at the role of art within society. So in the end, a work in itself can hardly exist. You need an audience, and then you need reflection. And I'm lucky and I'm happy that we were able to make this book under your guidance. And I'm a book lover, so in a way, I trust that the book is still one of the best mediums to conserve knowledge and art. And it's very accessible through libraries, and it's much more accessible than collecting a book than collecting a work of art.
Yes, I think that as I mentioned to you, I would say before this book, I was always so much more interested in hardcover books. And then when I held your book in my hands, I was like, okay, maybe now I've moved to the other side of the soft cover book. So you sold me on that. And because it holds really nicely, and because there's so much text in it, one could hold it, read it, and it's really flexible. And I think each time I look at this book and the choices that were made, whether from the authors to the images to putting the floor plan of the gallery, we constantly opened up to the reader their understanding of the project that we were doing in terms of the relationship, curatorial and an exhibition, and then having the documentation and then the author's words to support this entire endeavor. And I think it really positions it as for me, another type of exhibition that lives on, So I don't know if there are any questions, and I mean, I want to thank everyone, the authors, the graphic designer, and everyone who is with us today, who took part. And I will turn it over back to Marcel to, I guess, end or continue.
No, don't you worry, we won't continue. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you especially, Gaëtane, for hosting this event as a moderator, and it was really interesting. And I want also to thank the audience for staying with us. It was going on for quite a while, the artist talk and the book, and I know that several followed both, the book presentation. Is there any questions still? So it's now the last chance to ask. You can do it via the microphone or via chat. And if not, I would like to thank everybody. Please come to Oldenburg and visit the show if we can open it corona-wise. Please buy the book. And yeah, hope to see you soon one day in real life.